Who is the best defense in the NFL for 2022? What's up, y'all? NFL Talk Zone back here today to give you my NFL defense rankings for 2022. So I did do the offense rankings. If you haven't checked those out, be sure to check those out. I did those a couple weeks ago. They'll be on the channel and in the playlist on the channel for the 2022 NFL rankings. But yeah, I'm excited to do the defenses. It's going to be shorter than the offensive one because I'm not putting the whole depth chart on the screen like I did for the offensive one. So I'm just going from 32 to 1, ranking the defenses, ranking the defense rosters going into 2022, and how I think they will play this season. So without further ado, let's get into the ranking. My number 32 defense in the NFL going into 2022 is the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks, they're kind of in a revamp here as a team overall. They lost Bobby Wagner on the defensive side of the ball after they cut him. What I will say, I do like the safeties with Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams. They have a solid young linebacker in Jordan Brooks. But outside of that, solid interior defensive lineman players with Shelby Harris and Poona Ford. But overall, they are really weak at the two most important areas, cornerback and pass rush overall. So I think that this defense is not going to be very good this year. I have them at dead last in the NFL at 32. On to 31, as you see, I have the Detroit Lions. The Lions, they're a very young defense, but I still think they're far away from being good. I love Aiden Hutchinson. I think that draft pick was a home run. I thought he should have went number 1 overall to the Jaguars in the draft, but the Lions were able to get him at 2. But outside of Hutchinson, I'm not a fan of much else. Amani O, the cornerback 1, he's good, but I don't really think he's like a go-to cornerback 1. I think he's more of a cornerback 2 in the cornerback 1 role. And outside of that, I'm really not a fan of much else of the defense. Although Romeo Okwara can be solid when healthy, so that's a bright spot. But I just think the Lions are kind of far away. They got a good piece, though, in Aiden Hutchinson. A couple other solid pieces, but outside of that, I don't like this defense at all this year. So I got the Lions at 31 on defense. On to 30, I got the Houston Texans. The Texans, I really do like the cornerback room. And I'm a believer that cornerback is the most important position on defense in the modern NFL with how much teams pass. I think that having lockdown cornerbacks is really important. And I do love Derek Stingley Jr. I love Derek Stingley. I think he's going to have an impressive rookie season. We saw his first year at LSU as a freshman. I think he can come into the NFL and be good from day one. So I like him. Steven Nelson, good number 2 corner. Desmond King, good slot corner. So I like the corners a lot. But outside of that, it's kind of young, and especially the front 7 is not very good in my opinion. The front 7's not as young as like the safeties with Jalen Petrie, who I like, but overall, I think that the front 7 is not very good, and that's what holds this defense back. And I think the corners, Stingley's still a rookie, so we'll see how he performs, but I do think he will be good and a bright spot for this Texans defense. On to 29, I got the New York Giants. The Giants, I love this defensive line. I will say that. The defensive line, you got Kayvon Thibodeau, who could miss some time, though, a little bit of time early on in the year with his preseason knee injury. And then you got Azeez Ojulari, who had an impressive rookie season as the other edge rusher. Then you got one of the top 10 or so defensive interior guys in football with Leonard Williams, and another good interior defensive piece in Dexter Lawrence. So I like this defensive line for the Giants. But outside of that, I do like Xavier McKinney at safety, but really you're looking at a weaker cornerback room. Adoree Jackson can potentially play solid as a cornerback 1, but outside of him, they really struggle in that aspect. The linebackers, they're not good, really. They cut Blake Martinez, so you're looking at potentially Tay Crowder as your best linebacker. So I'm just not really a fan of this Giants defense as a whole outside of the D-line and Xavier McKinney. So I got the Giants as my number 29 defense in the NFL for 2022. On to my number 28 defense, I got the Arizona Cardinals. As much as I love J.J. Watt, outside of him, this D-line is just not good. It has potential to be a bottom 5 D-line in football. They lost Chandler Jones. But onto the linebackers, I do think Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins can potentially develop into a good young linebacker core. And I do love the safeties. Buda Baker, top 10 safety in football. Then you got Jalen Thompson, good other safety for them. But the corners aren't super good. Byron Murphy has shown development potential, and he can be a good, solid inside corner at sometimes, but nothing elite or anything unless he takes that jump into elite status. But the outside corners, you're looking at Trayvon Mullen coming off an injury and Marco Wilson. So overall, that just hurts the cornerback group as a whole. So I think the Cardinals' defense is not going to be very good this year. So I got him at 28. On to number 27, I got the Falcons. Overall, the defensive line outside of Grady Jarrett, the other three players might not even be starters on most other NFL teams. So this defensive line is not going to be good at all this year, in my opinion. But moving on to the corners, AJ Terrell shown he can play like a top 5, top 10 corner in football. And you got Casey Hayward, who is still good. So I like the cornerback room. But the safety room, one of the bottom in football. The linebackers has potential, I guess, with Rashaan Evans and Deion Jones can play all right when healthy. But outside of as a whole, as the defense is, I don't think it's going to be very good this year. I just don't think they have enough depth or good talent around those star players like Grady Jarrett and AJ Terrell. I feel like they need more talent around them to make this defense be good. And I think that defensive line really, really, really holds this defense back from being good. So I got the Falcons defense at 27. On to 26, I got the Jacksonville Jaguars. I do think that this young front seven can impress. I like Trayvon Walker, not as much as some others, but I do think he can be a good run defender from day one and maybe have pass rushing upside. Then I like Josh Allen a lot. Young player, still developing. I like Devin Lloyd, who they added in the draft at linebacker. I think he's going to be a good linebacker from day one. And they added Oluokun from the Falcons, the linebacker, who I think can be good too on the Jags. And I do like another linebacker they drafted, Chad Muma. He was out of Wyoming, I believe, this past draft. I think he was a solid pick for them. So I like this front seven, but overall, what really makes this defense not be high at all is the secondary. The safety room, I think, has a case to be the worst in football. Then the corners, Shaquille Griffin, Tyson Campbell, Darius Williams. None of them is a number one corner in the league, in my opinion. They can all maybe be good number two corners, but I feel like they're just lacking a number one corner. And I think the secondary as a whole isn't very good. And while I do like the front seven, it is still young and has to develop. So I think that this defense is a couple years away from being good and a couple pieces away from being good. But I got them at 26 for 2022. On to my number 25 defense. It's the New England Patriots. I feel that this Patriots defense has or is going to simply take a big regression this year. You lost J.C. Jackson. You don't have Stephon Gilmore anymore. You lost some guys who are leaders like Kyle Van Noy, Dante Hightower, and Jamie Collins in that linebacker room. So I just don't see a ton of talent. The cornerbacks have a case to be the worst group in football, though with Seattle. The safety is the talented position on this defense. Got guys like Devin McCourty, Kyle Duggar, Adrian Phillips, Jabril Peppers you added. So I think the safety room is good, but outside of this defense as a whole doesn't have a strong position group. Look at the defensive line. Matt Judon, he had a career year last year, but is he really going to be like a top 10 edge rusher? Not, in my opinion. I do like Christian Barmore, but outside of those two guys, I think the defensive line as a whole is pretty weak. And I think Jawan Bentley, solid linebacker, but nothing special. I think the linebacker core is weak, and I think the cornerback core is weak. I think you just have good safeties and a couple other good pieces, but I don't think you have any like strong, dominant units that are just going to make this team be a very good defense. I do respect Bill Belichick. But with that being said, I just don't think they have enough talent to be any higher than this on my defensive rankings. So I have the Patriots defense at 25 for 2022. On to the next four defenses. At number 24, I got the Chicago Bears. The Bears kind of in a transition year defensively. They lost Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, Bottle Nichols as the most notable pieces that they lost on defense. Then, as far as it goes now, I do like Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn to help this front seven be somewhat solid. Nothing special, though. And the secondary is young with potential. Guys like Jalen Johnson, you got Jaquan Briscoe, Kylo Gordon, and now kind of a veteran there in Eddie Jackson. He's kind of a veteran at this point with the young guys around him. I do think that the secondary has potential. I just think it's hard to see them put it all together this year with two rookies and Matt Eberflus now coming in first year. But I do think that they definitely have potential. But overall, this defense, I think it's not going to be awful, but I think it's not going to be anything special. I got it around this just outside the top 20 range at 24. Moving on to 23, Carolina Panthers defense. I think that they are not going to be anything special. I do like Brian Burns, but I think outside of Brian Burns, the defensive line is really lacking, and that's what holds them back. Because I do like the cornerback room with J.C. Horn in his second year coming off an injury. I like Dante Jackson as the number 2 corner. I think that the safety room has potential. Jeremy Chin shown he can be good. They added Xavier Woods, who is coming off a career year with the Vikings at free safety. So I do think that the secondary has potential, and I like Shaq Thompson a lot. I just think outside of Brian Burns, this D-line isn't going to be special, and I think that's what holds them back. But I got them here at number 23. So they can be maybe solid. On to 22, I got the Las Vegas Raiders defense at 22 for 2022. I love the pass rush. I love Max Crosby. I like the addition of Chandler Jones and Bilo Nichols. Bilo Nichols is playing in the interior, Chandler Jones out on the edge. So I think that this pass rush can be nasty and really help this defense a lot. I do like Denzel Perryman at linebacker. But the secondary, it's going to be a potential thing that holds this defense back. I don't see the secondary playing better than average. I think Nate Hobbs can be a good slot corner in this league as he's coming off a good rookie season. You added Rocky Ya-Sin, see how he performs. But overall, I just don't think that the secondary is going to be anything special, and I think that's what holds this defense back. So I got the Raiders defense at 22. On to 21, I got the Cowboys. As much as I love Micah Parsons, who I think can potentially be a Defensive Player of the Year player this year, I like DeMarcus Lawrence. I like the addition of Anthony Barr. But I just think the rest of the front seven holds them back from being elite because I think the rest of the front seven can really potentially struggle in some areas. I still think with those 3 guys I named that this front seven can potentially be good. I just don't see it really being elite. And then looking at the secondary, outside of Trevon Diggs, I don't think it's very good at all. And I think that could really hold this defense back as a whole. So I just think the depth in the front seven and the overall secondary outside of Diggs is what holds this defense back. But they do have a couple star players, like I mentioned, Parsons, Diggs, Lawrence, which can maybe help them be in the solid range at 21. So I got the Cowboys defense at 21 for 2022. On to the next set of defenses. I got the Kansas City Chiefs at 20. I really like this defensive line. I think Chris Jones is obviously elite, one of the best interior defensive linemen in football. Then you got George Karlaftis, the rookie edge rusher out of Purdue, who I think can be one of the better defensive rookies in the NFL this year. Then you got a solid player in Frank Clark. I like the addition of Carlos Dunlap to add depth to that edge rush group. So I really think this D-line overall has potential to be very good. Then onto the linebacker core, you got guys like Nick Bolton, Willie Gay Jr. I think that this overall linebacker core is young, but I do like Nick Bolton a lot after his rookie year. So I think that they have potential. I think they're solid. Then the cornerback room, I like the corners, but I do think you are relying on a rookie in Trent McDuffie to be a number 1 corner, which is always a question mark. Corners can be fluky sometimes, and I am high on Trent McDuffie, but he is a rookie, but we'll see how he performs. I think he can be good. So I do like this cornerback room, but I think you're kind of relying on a rookie a lot. Then the safeties, you lost Tyrann Mathieu, which really hurts your defense, but you did add Juan Thornhill, or you still have Juan Thornhill, and you added Justin Reed. So safety room still solid, but nothing special there. So I think overall this defense got some solid pieces, and then I think that they have just a very good defensive line. So I think overall this defense is going to be pretty good this year. But I still do got them at 20 just because there's a lot of good defenses. Hard to have them any higher than this. On to number 19, I got the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers have regressed, in my opinion, on defense over the last year or so. I still do think they have the best defensive line, though, in football, led by Cameron Hayward and TJ Watt. But I think if you're looking at the rest of the defense as a whole, the cornerbacks have really regressed over the last couple of years. You have lost both Steven Nelson and Joe Hayden over the last couple of years. And I think that this overall defense has just regressed too. You look at last year, they weren't as good as they were 2-3 years ago. And I think that although the pass rush is good, as I said, I'm not super high on the corners, and I'm not a fan of the linebacker core really at all. But you do have Minka Fitzpatrick, who is one of the best free safeties in football. So I think that this pass rush, Mike Tomlin, having Minka back there is enough to get him in the top 20, but I don't think they're an elite defense anymore because of the corners and some of the other pieces. So I got the Steelers defense at 19. On to 18, I got the Washington Commanders. This defense, I I wish it would have developed a little bit more than it has over the last couple of years with the young guys, but I do still love the defensive line. But Chase Young is out for at least the first 4 games, so that does hurt them a little bit and affect them maybe a little bit ranking wise. But the linebacker core still needs to develop. You got Cole Holcomb, Jamin Davis, but the safety room isn't very good. Still got a young guy though in Cameron Curl and Bobby McCain, a little bit older veteran. But I think that overall the linebacker safeties holds this defense back. I do like the corners, but it isn't special. I do think Kendall Fuller is good. He's not a top 10 or number one corner or anything, but he's still a good, solid number one corner. William Jackson, like to see him play better than he did last year. But overall, I just think this defense has a lot of solid, but outside of the defensive line, I don't think it's special. And Chase Young is out for 4 games at least, so I got to factor that in a little bit. So I got Washington Commandos defense at number 18 for 2022. On to 17, I got the Denver Broncos. I don't think this defense is quite as good as it was on paper a few years ago. I still do like the defensive line, but over the last couple years and really a while, Von Miller's been there. So he wasn't there for the back half of last year because they traded him, but going into last season, you're ranking Von Miller with them. So that really helps him be like a better defense on paper going into the year than this year. And you're looking at the defensive line, though. I do like it. Bradley Chubb, DJ Jones, Randy Gregory. I like the defensive line. I like the cornerback room, really, but I'm still not sure if Patrick Surtain is going to be an elite number one corner. I think he can be good, but can he be elite? We'll see this year. Ronald Darby, solid number 2. Nothing special, though. The safety room I do like a lot, though. Justin Simmons, arguably the best free safety in football. Kareem Jackson, I think, is still there as the strong safety. So overall, I think this defense isn't quite as good as it was a few years ago. Also, I got to mention the linebacker core is what really holds them back too. But overall, I still think it's a good defense because of the D-line and cornerback room and Justin Simmons. But I think that you're not going into year with Von Miller anymore. Vic Fangio is gone. The linebacker room is not good, in my opinion. So I think that this defense isn't quite as good as it was a few years ago, but still would be pretty good. I have him here at number 17. At number 16, I got the New York Jets defense. I think that this is sneakily a very good defense this year. I think they're the most improved defensive unit in football. I like Robert Saleh as a defensive coach and a head coach, really. I think that this defensive line is going to be top 5 to 10 in football this year, led by Quinnen Williams in the interior. Then you got a guy who can play interior and edge in John Franklin Myers, who I like a lot. Then you got Carl Lawson coming off injury. You drafted Jermaine Johnson in the first round this year. You got depth pieces like Sheldon Rankins and Vinny Curry. So I really like this defensive line a lot. I actually like the linebackers too with Quan Alexander and CJ Mosley. I think Sauce Gardner, the corner you drafted number 4 overall, is going to be good from day one and has elite potential. Maybe not this year, but by year 2 or 3. I like the addition of DJ Reed at corner. I think that's a solid addition. So overall, I think this Jets defensive unit is going to be sneakily good this year. I got them at 16. On to the Titans. They're led by Jeffrey Simmons, the big man in the middle of the defensive line. Jeffrey Simmons, a top 5 defensive line interior player in football, in my opinion. Then they did suffer a big blow recently. They lost Harold Landry out for the year. That kind of floats them a little bit, but I still think they got other solid pieces on that D line with Danico, Autry, and Bud Dupree. So I still think they can have a pretty solid defensive line. The linebackers are solid, but I really love the secondary. Kevin Byard, I think, is a top 5 safety in football. You got Amani Hooker. Christian Fulton has really developed as a corner. I think Elijah Molden is going to be a good box safety or slot corner in this league. Then Caleb Farley is in his second year now. So I think this young secondary, led by the veteran Kevin Byard, has potential. Then on to the coaching at defense. Mike Vrabel, very good defensive coach and head coach overall, and I think that he really helps him out too. So I think that this unit is very good for the Titans. I got him at 15. On to the Bengals, my number 14th defense in football. I love the Bengals defense. I think that the defensive line is very good, led by Trey Hendrickson. You got DJ Reed, DJ Riedel, BJ Hill. In the interior, I think that they can stop the run very well. I like Sam Hubbard on the other side too at edge. I already mentioned Trey Hendrickson is a very good pass rusher. So I like this defensive line. Then I like Jesse Bates at free safety, Logan Wilson. They drafted Dax Hill. I think that they got some players back there at linebacker and safety too, and corner. I think this cornerback room is good. Mike Hilton is one of the best slot corners in football. I think Eli Apple is kind of the weakness on this cornerback room. I do like Chidobe Awuzie, but if he has another career year, these corners can be very good, looking at the group as a whole. But if Chidobe Awuzie is just a solid number 1 corner, like I expect him to be, then I think this cornerback room maybe isn't special, but it's still good enough to be solid and help this defense out, because I think that they got pieces everywhere else. So I like this Bengals defense a lot, and I got the Bengals defense at 14th. On to my number 13 defense, I got the Minnesota Vikings. I think that this defensive line is just stacked. You added Zadarius Smith, you got Danielle Hunter, hopefully fully healthy this year. Then you still have Dalvin Tomlinson. I believe he's still there. I don't think he went anywhere. So I think that this defensive line is going to be very good. And then you look at the linebackers. You did lose Anthony Barr, but you added Jordan Hicks to go with Eric Kendricks. So I think that this linebacker core is good. I think that the safety core can be one of the best in football with Harrison Smith and Lewis Sine. And then the cornerback room, I think, is improving. You got Patrick Peterson. You added Andrew Booth in the draft. Still got Cameron Dantzler. So I do like this Vikings defense a lot. I got them at 13th for 2022. My number 12 defense in the NFL is the Cleveland Browns. I really like this combination of Garrett and Clowney rushing the passer. We all know Myles Garrett is one of the best defensive players in football. And then Clowney had a good year last year, and I think he's going to have another good year. So I like this duo, but I think the interior defensive line holds this D-line back a little bit. But I still really like this combination of Garrett and Clowney to help boost this D-line. And then at linebacker, you're led by JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I think he can take a step into that top 10 linebacker territory this year after a very good rookie year. What really stands out with this defense, though, and helps him be this high is this cornerback room. I think Denzel Ward is a top 5 cornerback in football. Greg Newsome had a good rookie season as a number 2. So I'm only expecting Greg Newsome to continue to develop. And then you got Greedy Williams, who was good in the slot last year. So I like this cornerback room a lot, and I think it's one of the better ones in football, sneakily. And then I think the safety duo is also pretty solid. You got John Johnson and Grant Delpit. So overall, I think that this Browns defense has a lot of talent and is going to be very good this year. So I got them at number 12. On to 11, I got the San Francisco 49ers. Well, I do think that this front seven is one of the very best in football, led by Nick Bosa, got Eric Armstead, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw. I think that this overall San Francisco Niners defense is still going to be very good, but not quite as good as last year. Mainly because I'm looking at the secondary, where the corners might be improved with Travis Ward. The safety, Jimmy Ward is out for at least 4 games, and the other safety spot, they lost to Quisky Tart. So the safety is really weak right now without Jimmy Ward there early in the season. Um, and I still do think the corners are on a little bit of the weaker end. Not like awful or anything, but I don't think they're like a top 10 or 15 cornerback room. So I think overall the secondary is going to maybe struggle early on a little bit more than you would like. But I think overall this defense will get it going, and they're still going to be a very good unit. I got them at number 11. On to number 10, I got the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams, with Aaron Donald, this D-line can always be one of the best in football. You did lose Von Miller, which hurts them a little bit, but you still got Leonard Floyd. And of course, as I mentioned, you got Aaron Donald. I like the addition of Bobby Wagner at linebacker. I think that the linebacker unit is solid. And then the secondary I still like a lot with Jalen Ramsey. You brought back Troy Hill, who you lost last offseason to Cleveland, but now you traded for him, so you got him back on your team. He will play slot probably. I think the other number 2 outside corner could be a little bit of a hole. I think it could be Robert Rochelle, could be someone else, but overall, I think this defense is still very good. Just maybe not top 5, just because that cornerback 2 spot could hurt him, and the loss of Von Miller, because you did lose Darius Williams, who was your corner 2. So I think losing Williams and Von Miller hurt him a little bit maybe, but still going to be very good. I got him at number 10. On to number 9, I got the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts defense is led by DeForest Buckner and Darius Leonard in the front 7. They added Yannick Ngakoue too, so I think that this front 7 overall is going to be very good. You still got other pieces in there like Kwity Paye and the other linebacker, Bobby Okereke. So I think that overall, this front 7 is going to be very dominant. And then the cornerbacks, I love this cornerback group. You added Stephon Gilmore, and you still got Kenny Moore in the slot. Isaiah Rodgers is your number 2 outside corner. So I think this cornerback room is a top 10 cornerback room in the league, maybe even higher than just top 10, maybe even top 5. But I think the only concern for this defense is, well, 2 things. Safety spot is a little bit concerning, and you did lose your defense coordinator last year in Matt Eberflus, but I still think that this defense has so much talent, and it's going to be a very good defense in 2022. So I got them at number 9. Now onto my number 8 defense. I got the Buffalo Bills at number 8. I love the addition of Von Miller, and I think overall this front 7 got guys like Matt Milano, Jermaine Edmonds, Ed Oliver, Greg Russo. I think that this front 7 is very good. But what I am concerned about with this defense is the corners. White is going to miss at least 4 games. And then you got Teron Johnson, Kaiir Elam as your other 2 top corners potentially. So I think that this overall defense is going to be very good still. Got him at number 8. But I think that this cornerback room is going to be not quite as good as you would think, and I think that that could hold them back a little bit from being top 5, but I still think overall very good defense. I still haven't even mentioned Jordan Poyle and Micah Hyde, both coming off career years. The question is, can they replicate career years? If not, they should still both be very good, but I think this defense still very good. Got them at number 8, just a little bit of a concern of how good are the corners going to be is what holds them back from being top 5. On to my number 7 defense, I got the Baltimore Ravens. Now, this defense, I think, has probably the very best secondary in football with Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, Kyle Fuller. You drafted Kyle Hamilton, and you added Marcus Williams. So the secondary is going to be probably the very best in football. But what holds them back from being top 5 as a defensive unit is because they did lose their defensive coordinator, Don Martindale, and they also front 7 is good, but it's just not elite, really. I just think it's probably good to solid front 7, nothing special. So I think with a very good secondary, going to be a very good defense, but I think that the front 7 probably just solid, and the loss of your defensive coordinator, Don Martindale, is what keeps them from being top 5, but still a very good defensive unit. On to number 6, I got the Miami Dolphins. I think this defensive line is elite. You got Emmanuel Ogbah. You now got Jalen Phillips in his second year. You signed 2 veterans in Melvin Ingram and Trey Flowers. You got Christian Wilkins, very good young defensive interior lineman. So I think overall, this defensive line can be one of the best defensive lines in all of football. I'm really that high on the Dolphins D line. You got solid linebackers. Jerome Baker is your main guy there. And then the secondary is led by Xavier Howard, one of the best corners in football, and then Javon Holland, one of the best young safeties in football, with potential to become one of the better safeties in football. So I think that the secondary, although they will have Byron Jones out for at least 4 games, still going to be very good, and they got an elite defensive line. So I really like this Dolphins defense this year. I got them at number 6. On to number 5 is probably the most talked about defense of the offseason just because of all the additions they made. They just have so much star power, is the Los Angeles Chargers, number 5. They added Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson, and Kyle Van Noy, and they added another good slot corner in Bryce Callahan. They added those 4 players, most notable names on defense, to a core that already has Joey Bosa, Derwin James, Asante Samuel Jr. now in his 2nd year, and you still got a young developing linebacker in Kenneth Murray. So I think overall, this defense is going to just be led by its star power. You got so many stars, and you added some interior guys to help with that defensive line, which they struggled to stop the run last year. But I think the addition of Khalil Mack, Calvin Noy, and the interior guys you added is going to only help them become a solid run-stopping defense. And then the secondary, J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel Jr., Bryce Callahan, Derwin James, Nasir Adderley, very good. So I think overall this team is just so much talent on defense, and I got them being the number 5 defense in football. So I got the Chargers at number 5 for my NFL defense rankings for 2022. On to the Big 4 defenses, the ones I call the Big 4. I think these are the elite defenses that have a case to be the best defense in football this year. So starting off at number 4, I got the Philadelphia Eagles. You're led by this elite deep defensive line. You got Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis in the interior. Then on the edge rusher positions, you got Hassan Reddick, who you added coming over from Carolina. You got Brandon Graham still there, the veteran who's dominant. And you you still got Derek Barnett and Josh Sweat. So you have so many pieces on this defensive line, very deep defensive line. This defensive line is going to be very good, probably top 2, 3 in football, maybe even the best D line in football. And then you look at the linebacker position. You added guys like Khalil White, Nakobe Dean, who I was very high on in the draft. I think he's going to be the best linebacker from this class. So I think this linebacker core has potential to be good. And then you look at the corners. You added James Bradbury to go along with Darius Slay. You also recently traded for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who might play some safety as well. So overall, this secondary is good too, they're led by a dominant defensive line and solid to good linebackers. So I think that's just a recipe for a very good defense. And I think that this Eagles defense is going to be top 4 in the NFL this year. On to number 3, I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're led by the elite front 7. Shaq Barrett, Vita Vea, added Akeem Hicks. They got William Golston, Joe Tryon, Shoyinka in that defensive line. So that defensive line is stacked. Then you got the veteran, Levante David. Still got Devin White as a young athletic linebacker. Hopefully he takes a step in his game this year. So overall, the front 7's dominant, one of the best in football. And then you look at the secondary. Antoine Winfield Jr. is sneakily one of the best safeties in football. Had a career year in his 2nd year last year. Only expecting big things out of him in his 3rd year. You got a kind of deep cornerback room with Carlton Davis, Sean Murphy Bunting, and Jamel Dean. They've all been together for years now. And then you got Logan Ryan, who they did cut, but I saw that they were going to bring him back to the team. So I expect him to still be there. So I really like this defense as a whole. And I think that the Bucs are going to be one of the best defenses in football. So I got them at 3. On to my number 2 defense, I got the New Orleans Saints defense. Notable additions this offseason were Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May, replacing Malcolm Jenkins and Marcus Williams at free safety, or at the safety spots. Losing Marcus Williams does hurt, but you got Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May. So I think that this overall secondary is going to be very good because of Lattimore at corner. You got Paulson Adebo, and then you got the two safeties I just named. So I think the secondary is one of the best secondaries, if not, well, not the best secondary because you got the Ravens still. But I think this is top 2, 3, 4, 5 secondary in football. And then the defensive line, you got Cameron Jordan, Marcus Davenport, who took a step in his game last year. Linebackers, you look at Demario Davis, one of the best linebackers in football. You also got Pete Werner in his second year now. So I think they just got a lot of big names on this defense, and they're led by Dennis Allen, head coach, who was previously the defensive coordinator for a while there. So I really like this defense, and I think they're going to be the second best in football this year. But my number one defense is the Green Bay Packers. I think that this Packers defense is led by just an elite front seven. You look at Rashawn Gary, who is one of the best edge rushers in football. I think he has a strong case to be a top 5 edge rusher this year and be in that defensive player of the year conversation. And then you got Preston Smith, you got Kenny Clark, who is probably the first or second best nose tackle in football. You drafted Devontae Wyatt, you signed Jerron Reed. So I really like this overall defensive line. And then you got the linebacker last year who was all pro first team in Devondre Campbell coming back. And you drafted Quay Walker out of Georgia. So I think this front seven is going to be very dominant. And then you get Jair Alexander coming back from injury as your cornerback 1. You got Eric Stokes as your cornerback 2. Rasul Douglas, cornerback 3. So I think that this overall cornerback room is just stacked. And then the safeties, Adrian Amos, Darnell Savage, I believe the third or fourth year together as the starting safeties. This defense is going to be very good. I got the Packers being my top defense in football this year, but it wouldn't shock me if any one of these defenses are number 1 because I think they can all be. So that's going to be it for the defense rankings for 2022, and appreciate you for watching. The season's about to start this week, so going to have content. Be sure to check out my podcast. Me and my co-host will be talking a lot of football this year. So thank you for watching, and have a good one.